If you felt a cold, sudden flutter in your chest right now, you would probably dismiss it as a momentary spasm, a bit of indigestion, or perhaps a passing wave of anxiety. You need to listen to me very carefully, because ignoring that quiet internal shift is exactly how people end up on a cold steel slab while they are still technically awake inside. I have performed over 3,000 autopsies. I have spent 2 decades staring into the quiet machinery of human failure, convinced I had mapped every single boundary between life and death. I believed the transition from living to dead was a one-way street with a very clear, heavily guarded border. I was wrong. You've probably walked into an empty room or a dark basement and felt an inexplicable chill run down your spine, a sudden, primal warning that you aren't as alone as you think. That is your nervous system picking up on micro signals your conscious mind hasn't processed yet. I felt that exact, freezing jolt of dread the moment I laid my gloved hand on her sternum. Her name was Julianne. She was 32 years old, found in a remote, unheated cabin after a severe winter storm. The paramedics had checked for a pulse, found nothing, and noted the advanced state of hypothermia. By the time she reached my table, she had been declared legally dead for nearly 6 hours. The air in an autopsy suite is always heavy, smelling faintly of chemicals and the metallic tang of old water. The only sound is the low, rhythmic drone of the exhaust fans. When you look at a body on a prep table, you expect a certain stillness. Death has a weight to it, a profound surrender of the muscles that you can recognize instantly. But as I adjusted the overhead surgical lights, something felt wrong. Her skin was a translucent, waxy white, almost like fine porcelain. There was no lividity, which is the dark purple pooling of blood that naturally settles in the lowest parts of a body after the heart stops. She was uniform, pristine, and impossibly pale. Without realizing it, you probably trust your own senses to tell you when someone is gone. You look for the rise of a chest, the warmth of skin, the color in a cheek, but biology is a master of disguise. Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis? That terrifying state where your mind wakes up, but your limbs are leaden, completely unresponsive, and you are trapped inside a cold, silent prison? Imagine that, but your core temperature has dropped to the freezing point, and your autonomic nervous system has slowed down to a microscopic crawl. I picked up the scalpel. The blade was cold, polished stainless steel. I made the first, shallow incision at the collarbone to begin the standard Y incision. I waited for the dark, sluggish flow of post-mortem blood that always accompanies the first cut. Nothing came. The tissue beneath the skin was completely white, dry, and clean, like cutting into a piece of marble. It was a physical impossibility. Even in cases of severe blood loss, there is always residual fluid in the capillary beds. And then the chest moved. It wasn't a breath. It was a slow, deep, mechanical contraction of the chest wall. I froze, the scalpel hovering inches from her collarbone. The silence of the morgue suddenly felt suffocating, pressing in on my ears. I reached out, my fingers trembling slightly beneath my latex gloves, and pressed them deep into her carotid artery. There was a long, agonizing pause. 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Then a soft, distinct thump. It was a pulse. It was weak, agonizingly slow, but it was there. But how does a heart beat with no blood? A heart is a hydraulic pump. Without fluid to move, without pressure to fill the chambers, the myocardium should seize, flutter, and die within minutes. It cannot pump vacuum. Yet beneath my fingers, her neck pulsed again. You've probably felt your own heart pounding violently in your chest during a moment of sheer panic, but your hands went completely ice-cold and numb. In moments of extreme stress or cold, your body makes an executive decision. It pulls all its resources to the core, shutting down the peripheral circulation to to keep the brain and heart alive. It is a survival mechanism designed to protect you. But what if that mechanism refuses to turn off, even after the fuel is gone? The horror of what lay on my table wasn't supernatural. It was a cold, calculated medical tragedy. As we frantically began life support protocols, hooking her to a warming unit and an artificial respirator, we discovered the truth. Julianne had been part of an illicit, off-grid medical trial. She had been injected with an experimental synthetic oxygen carrier, a clear, fluorocarbon-based liquid designed to replace blood in extreme trauma cases. It was a colorless emulsion that could carry oxygen without the need for red blood cells. The people who abandoned her in that cabin had drained her blood, replacing it with this clear, artificial fluid, and then administered a powerful, paralyzing neurotoxin that mimicked rigor mortis and halted her breathing. They thought she was a failed experiment. They thought she was dead, but her cells were still desperately drinking from that synthetic, colorless stream, keeping her brain alive in a freezing, metabolic hibernation. Her heart was a stubborn machine. It didn't know how to stop, even when there was nothing left of her humanity to save. Think about that the next time you feel your own pulse racing for no apparent reason. We like to think of ourselves as a singular mind, a conscious soul driving a physical vehicle. But the truth is, you are a collection of ancient, stubborn biological programs. Your heart doesn't care if your mind has given up. It doesn't care if the world thinks you are gone. It will keep firing its tiny electrical signals in the dark, desperate to preserve a life that your conscious mind has already abandoned. Julianne survived, though she would never fully recover from the lack of oxygen during those hours on the threshold. But she changed how I look at every person who enters my room. You don't lose yourself all at once. You lose yourself one ordinary day, one quiet heartbeat at a time, while the machine inside you keeps fighting to stay alive, long after you've forgotten how to live.